So Guts is now face to face with Wyald's true form, and the Band of the Hawk ideas have no idea what the fuck they're looking at. Guts fears the same feeling that he had against Zodd. Wyald picks up an entire freaking tree and knocks Guts away. The Band of the Hawk members try to attack him next, but he knocks them all away as well, and even picks a man up and his horse and just eats him. Judo yells for everyone to retreat, obviously. What else would you do in this situation? Except Casca, now quote-unquote with Guts, runs to his side yelling at him to get up and that he promised that they'd go away together. This is really cute and endearing. It's another display of the bond that they've developed after all of this time and the loyalty that exists between them, not only as comrades, but now as lovers. But Wyald sees this and goes after her. He holds her up in his hand, this 8-foot, 9-foot tall creature, and rips her top off. From his giant mouth, his tongue slithers out, which looks particularly like something else, and goes to lick a particular spot of hers. Not to worry though, Guts isn't taking that shit and stabs a sword upward, cutting off his dick tongue and demanding to fight him one-on-one. I love Guts' inner monologue telling himself to fight through the fear and move forward to attack, a constant theme of his character that I think I'll always find inspiring. Fighting in the face of impossible odds. And he does make some great strikes at Wyald, but Wyald seems to be just too powerful. He picks him up and throws Guts into the woods. Guts has a brief flashback of this time training in the mountains over the year that he was gone. He has a small chat with Erica, the blacksmith Godo's granddaughter, about Zodd. It's a very brief, but it shows that Guts is always waiting for this day. Always knowing that he would eventually face something that's unhuman again. Little does he know that would soon become the norm, but that's besides the point. Guts looks up at Wyald and sees a bit of his regenerative abilities. Zodd had that power as well. And back in the Black Swordsman arc, that takes place chronologically after this arc, we saw the Count was cut down to just a head and was still alive. So the regenerative abilities of these apostles are truly the main factor of what makes them such a powerful force. Guts grabs a dead body of a Black Dog member and then sets it against a tree as a decoy for Wyald to attack. He did this against the Count as well. I know I forgot to cover it when I did the Black Swordsman arc, but I think this is a nice callback to that. Or a call forward, I guess. And then Guts jumps down on top of Wyald from a tree. Guts goes wild. Very pun intended there. He stabs Wyald in the chest and neck and eye. Wrapping around him, Guts falls off, and then Wyald finally goes down. Casca rushes to him as Guts leans against the tree, exhausted from this tiring battle. We cut back to Princess Charlotte for a moment, who is briefly shown waking up in her room and asking about her precious Griffithu. Her handmaiden doesn't let her know that Griffith is still being pursued. Charlotte goes to her window and she reveals what Griffith whispered to her, that he would come back to her. Looking out the window, she sees a figure high in the sky. A figure she doesn't quite recognize, but it is the silhouette of motherfucking Zodd! As the Band of the Hawk recoup after the battle, a few things are going on. One, Judo explains to Casca the extent of Griffith's injuries, how there's no coming back from it. Meanwhile, Guts and Griffith hang out, and Griffith points to his armor, wanting to wear it. Guts obliges and dresses him up. A bittersweet moment. And while that's going on, Wyald regenerates, what he can at least, and starts crawling towards their camp. Wyald breaks into the tent Guts and Griffith are in. He's bleeding, sword broken through his neck, and screaming that he doesn't want to die. Again, this calls back to Guts' fight with the Count in the Black Swordsman arc. He too was worried about his death when he was just a severed head, and this is when he called the God Hand and opened the Behelit. This is the first time we saw any of that in the manga. Here's a similar situation. Apostles, on the verge of death, know that they will be dragged into hell, and thus fear death just as much as humans do, if not more, for knowing the effect on what's on the other end. So Wyald picks Griffith up and demands he call the God Hand right then and there. The Hawk members yell to let Griffith down, and Wyald calls them fools and rips off the armor and bandages, showing Griffith's body to all of them. Nothing but bones, skin peeled off, and even muscles gone. Wanting them to know that they have no hope of their leader returning, Wyald just laughs at them. But then Wyald notices that Griffith does not have a Behelit. He freaks out, asking where it is, and that he knows that Griffith should have one. The Hawks all look around confused, but they don't have much time to dwell on it, as Zodd, lands behind Wyald and towers over him, showing his sheer size and power in comparison. Zodd wastes no time. He picks Wyald up and impales him with the horns on top of his head. Wyald pleads to him that Griffith does not have the Behelit, so he must not be the one. Zodd doesn't listen to this shit and just rips him in half over his horns. He then looks to Griffith and says that the Behelit will return to his hands. With that, he takes flight again and leaves. Then, from the ground, a bunch of spirits, reminiscing what happened to the Count, come out and drag Wyald into a portal to hell before disappearing. All that's left is a small, withering body of an old man, the empty corpse of whoever Wyald was before turning into a demon. Now keep in mind, if you're a member of the Band of the Hawk that didn't see Zodd the first time, and you're here watching all this shit go down, and, you know, as far as you were concerned, everything was normal in the world and there were no supernatural events going on, this would be quite the life-changing moment. I mean, if your life would last that much longer, but we're about to get there. But on the topic of Zodd, I still don't know what his endgame is in all of this. As writing this breakdown, I am on volume 21 of the manga. I just finished the Conviction arc. It was really, really good. We'll get there. And it seems as though he's doing everything he can to make sure Griffith's ascension happens. But letting them live during their first encounter, tossing Guts a sword to make sure they won the Battle of Doldrey, and now killing Wyald so that he doesn't kill Griffith. But at the same time, it seems like Zodd is only out for himself and is just looking for good warriors to fight. So what is the balance here? Or is he looking for someone to serve, perhaps? Somebody worthy enough of his strength to have more strength than him. Who knows? I guess I'll find out eventually. So the Band of the Hawk, after witnessing such intensity, just sit in an open field, unknowing of what to do next. Corcus doesn't want to believe what he saw and still holds up the hope that Griffith can get better. But Judeau confirms Griffith's condition. Corcus yells to the wind, and with this great wide shot of everyone looking down defeated is shown. Notice the way Miura draws the sky and the clouds here. Something is coming. Members talk about maybe Casca still leading them in some way. Casca and Guts interact briefly as Griffith watches from the carriage that he's in. Casca goes in to put new bandages on Griffith, and I can imagine this moment for her. Seeing the man she followed for years, always wanting to be with, always wanting to be important to, and now she sees how small and feeble his hands are. She's taking care of him as a cripple. Griffith leans forward and falls on top of her. Forcibly, or at least as forcibly as he can in this condition. I don't particularly think he's trying to sexually assault Casca, in this instance anyways. One, because he probably doesn't even have a dick anymore, but also I feel like this is him acting out after seeing her and Guts together. It's one of those things where you only want something once you can't have it. Casca was always in his back pocket. He was used to the idea that she would be with him in an instant if he ever wanted it. But now she's with someone else. So it's an attempt to say, oh, now I want you. Also to try to take something away from Guts, who is the person that Griffith blames for all of this, and who is the person that I believe Griffith really loves. Guts and Judeau have some words about what's going to happen. Judeau saying that he might start up a group of thieves and that he thinks Guts should go with Casca and leave together. The other Hawk members, including Gaston, run over to ask Guts to be their new leader. Guts remembers Judeau telling him that he may find his place, and may find where he belongs with the Band of the Hawk long ago when he first joined. And Guts wonders if he should have just stayed and not left for that year. And the really fucked up part of it is if Guts had stayed, none of this may have happened. Even if Guts did nothing wrong per se, it was Griffith who did do something wrong, started this horrible chain of events. But even so, the burden Guts will carry by making that decision isn't something to take lightly. And now, Casca comes to him, telling him that she can't leave. She can't leave Griffith in the condition that he's in. She feels too horrible seeing her hero like that. And like I said, Griffith falling on top of her was probably a display of taking back Casca belonging to him. So she tells Guts that he needs to go alone. So Guts, just trying to be his own man and finding a dream of his own, inadvertently pushed him away from everything that actually made him feel whole. Inside the carriage, Griffith has a vision of himself as he used to be, standing strong and pointing to the castle in the distance. The one from his memories, the one castle he saw as a child, the thing that inspired his dream in the first place. He takes the reins of the horses and gets them to start running, heading towards this imaginary castle. Then there's a flash of an imaginary future. Very short, but I rarely see anybody talk about it while looking up Berserk content. We see Griffith sitting at a table while Casca is serving him a meal. Then a little boy runs by that Casca calls Guts. Griffith remarks that the peace and quiet isn't so bad, with a dull look in his eyes. This is like a potential look into the future. Imagine if Griffith did heal as much as he could from the torture. He may only be able to sit at a table, but he's alive. If Casca still loved him deep down, he at least imagines he could be with her if he wanted to. And they'd give up war and fighting and just live a boring, mundane life. And him seeing Guts as a child perhaps throws my perspective of him being in love with Guts in a different direction. Or maybe it only changes it slightly. Maybe he actually sees Guts as his child, and he has love for him in that way. I don't have children, but I understand that once you do, they inadvertently become your focus. So maybe this is what took Griffith's vision away from his dream. Maybe having Guts around and now this desire to protect him at all costs and keep him under his wing was like a parent nurturing a child. And Guts leaving was like a kid growing up and walking out after their parent had already sacrificed so much for them. That could be way off base, I'm not sure, but it's just some food for thought. Griffith then wakes up in a shallow lake, having crashed the carriage nearby. He sits up and notices his skinny arm is now broken. He laughs at this and then sees a stick pointing up out of the water. And here, in his complete despair, Griffith attempts to kill himself. He misses just barely, and then starts to cry on his hands and knees. But then, in the shallow water, having flown through the sewers and rivers for a year, the crimson Behelit wraps up around his hand. He pulls it out of the water, shocked and astonished, and remembering what Wyald and Zodd had said to him, that it would return to his hand, and that he will call the guardian angels. So thanks a lot for watching this video, guys. We only have a couple of parts left. I appreciate the support and the like of these videos. Please give it a thumbs up. I'd really appreciate it. Subscribe if you want to, and we'll see you in the next Berserk video.